Hello everyone. So I started this live stream because I felt like I needed to have at least the camera to talk to, Because I think all my thoughts in my head and I need to put it out into something. I feel like I need someone to talk to first to get the thoughts moving, because I feel like there's an echo chamber in my mind that's sort of repeating the same things. If I project it onto you, then I can sort of get some of that out there and I can free up some space in my mind for me to to get the whole brain chugging along. So let me check my message real quick. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do some. Oh yeah, do I have? Okay, yep. Wild Hearts, TCG Philosophy. Okay. As you can see, I've got this Google Doc open, and I'm just trying to figure out how to mathematically balance cards at the most basic level of hit points and damage. I don't even know if it's possible, because there may just be some factors that are completely uncontrollable that depend on like the frequency of cards in the game and how much they're played. So this question might not even be answerable. But basically, I'm trying to see if there's a way I can mathematically calculate hit points and damage into a single um, value of cost for the card. Now, my problem is that uh, you can't just multiply hit points and damage because you have to account for excess damage from cards that have higher damage than their creature's remaining health because the remaining damage in that attack goes to waste. So you have to account for that as a factor. And yeah. So I have to figure that out. It's driving me nuts. It works if all the cards in the game have trample. If all the cards in the game have trample, then just multiplying the two values works because the damage carries over with trample. But you can't do that here because damage doesn't carry over because there's chump blocking. So instead, what I have to do is I have to do some really funky math or just accept that it's a problem that can't be solved. So let's do this. You all ready? Okay. So we got hit points and damage. Hit points is representation. Damage, 'cause what does it mean to multiply them? Say make a table. You need a table. Got HP. If you think about it, since because hit points save over turns in the system I'm making, so which means creatures can get wounded. So that means that unlike Magic the Gathering, where they regenerate at the end of the turn, um, every card with health in the game is going to have health that decreases over the span of several turns. So I guess I'm just trying to identify patterns. Try and make a formula for this stuff. Okay. So I think we can agree that if a card has 0 hit points, that no matter how much attack it has, it instantly dies because 0 hit points. So 0 cost, 0 cost, 0 cost, right? Because of this, we know that it's HP times attack. But it's not just that. I think there have to be exponentials in here. I guess what I'm trying to do is narrow deductive reasoning. I have to use process of elimination for this stuff. Now, see, for these columns, even though they have 0 attack, they still work as chump blocks, so they are worth something. They have to have cost that is above 0. But the question is how? Well, we can say greater than 0, right? These have to be greater than 0 cost. And then because having more hit points statistically makes it better, it's kind of subjective, but better. We can say that greater than 0. So we can say greater than 0 HP cost, greater than 0 attack, 1 cost, greater than 0 2 cost, greater than 0 3 cost, greater than 0 4 cost, and so on. Now these ones can say having 1 attack is better than having 0 attack. So you can say greater than is greater than 0 1, right? 0 1. Yeah, greater than 0 1. And then this is greater than 1 1. So 1 2 now. Um, greater than 2 attack, 1 health. Aha! Deductive reasoning. Scott uses a more logic. Deductive reasoning. Okay. Just narrow down the pool. That's how you do it. Narrow down the pool. Like shaving off excess fat. Find the juicy inner core. What is that? Okay, well, 0 0. This is greater than this. So we can say, let's highlight these. This is gonna be gray. And we'll do it in sort of a rainbow order so it's easy to read. greater than 0 HP. And green. So, okay, greater than 0, 1. Okay, but now we're getting into weird territory here. This cost is greater than 0 attack 1. Yes. Now a 2/2 is better than. No, I'm not hungry. Sorry. What cost? 1 attack. But let's say 2 attack, 2 HP. So this is better than the 2/1. And it's better than the. So 2/2 is better than 2/1 is better than 1/2, right? This one. So having 1 attack and 2 hit points is better than having 1 attack and 1 hit points. It's also better than having. So 1 attack, 2 hit points. And it's better than having 0 attack, 2 hit points. Make this like a dusty yellow. Like a peach, maybe? Light and peach. Okay. What pattern can we start from this? So a 2/1 is better than a 1/1. 2/2 is better than a 1/2. 2/3 is better than a 1/3. 2/4 is better than a 1/4. A 1/3 is better than a 0/3. So 0/1, 0/2, 0/3, 0/4, 0/5. And then also use this. This is greater than. So having 1 attack and 3 HP is better than having 1 attack and 2 HP. better than having one attack, 3 HP, better than having one attack, 4 HP. And this one, the health is increasing. What's the attack? These are numbers. I can't read numbers. Too much information. They sort of blossom outward. You got this, and then they split this, and they split. These just split from here. Secret Clan. They are right here. One, two, three, four, nine, 10, 11, this one's good. It's up neighbor and it's left neighbor. What's good? It's up neighbor and it's left neighbor. Up neighbor, left neighbor. So we don't need any of this. We can keep them. I don't care. They're greater than their up neighbors and their left neighbors. Hmm. I wish there was some kind of exponential I could just assign these to. There must be some way. Damage? Can assign letters to these, right? Zero cost. A, B, B, B is greater than A, And greater than 1, 1 would be like C. 0, 2. I'll just call it like this. Like this. C, C, D, D, D. Oops. C, D, D. I'm sorry, it's just helping me think about things easier, okay? I'm an INFP, so I have Demon TI, so I gotta be very careful about this stuff. It's very fundamental to the game. Because, see, vertical and horizontal relationships are easy, but it's the diagonal relationships that get me. Because if you're to just, we just assume, yeah, 1 HP, right? Got A, B, C, and D. 1 HP creatures. Let's write it as a value. 1 HP, 0 attack, 0. 1, 2, 3. So this has to be greater than 0, so I don't know. Okay. So, 0, 1, 2, 3, huh? But it's not linear. It's not linear. You can't just apply it linearly. Okay. If all the other creatures in the game are 1 HP, then these are all the same value. Oh, all the other creatures in the game are 1 HP, and they're the same value for everything. Except, and this one's 1 HP. So all the other creatures in the game. Oh. If all the other creatures in the game are 1 HP and at least 1 attack, then every creature in the game is equal. But the thing is, if it's a 1-0, a 1-0 can encounter another 1-0. Or no, sorry, 0-1. A 0-1 can counter another 0-1, and then they can't do anything to each other. But doesn't that mean they're equal? But no, because if the other one's is if the other one is a 1-0, or sorry, 0-1, if the other one's a 0-1, it's better to be a 1-1 than a 0-1. Therefore, you can say this is less than A. Greater than 0, you can say 0 less than X, less than O. Has to be greater than 0 because it counts for a chump block, but it has to be less than these ones. Oh dear, deductive reasoning. Because then you have a box of possibilities. Right, insert table. We'll have 0-1 versus 1 plus slash, wait, 1 plus 0-1 versus another 0-1. Tie. 0-1 versus 1 plus slash 1 wins. 1 plus slash 1 versus 0-1 wins. Sorry. Therefore, if you're here, it's in your better interest. If you're left, it's in your better interest to be here. If you're right, it's in your better interest to be here. Right, okay. That's how you rationalize it. Now you go up in HP. And you have to think about this very carefully. Because now we're dealing with 1 HP and 2 HP creatures. Like another table. So ones. Okay. Look on the table. The 3x3 now. If that's even how you do it. Okay, so you got left versus right. 0, 1 versus 0, 1. And we've got a 1. 1-1 versus a 1-1. And you've got 2 plus 2 versus another 2 plus. And we got 0-1. This is left advantage. Downward is left advantage. So that's 1-1 versus 0-1. Left and on the right side, just do that 0-1 versus 1-1. think we need another table. We need a 3D table. Um, my Google Gaga brain don't understand any of this. Zero, one, 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 two plus one, one, two plus one. We can't figure these ones out yet. Um, see, you can't predict how much it's going to carry over because the amount of carryover is a variable you have to account for to determine the cost. If the amount of carryover is zero, then you can just multiply everything together. But since you're trying to solve for this variable of carryover, but you you don't know how much there is, because you could be playing a game full of one ones, or it could be playing a game full of five ones, or 5 2s. Game full of 1 1s with nothing else, there's 0 carryover. Game full of 5 2s, there's a bunch of carryover. It's a variable you can't calculate because it depends entirely on the frequency of the cards and how important they are as targets. So, this problem is unsolvable. So instead, we have to ask a more philosophical question. Since the amount of carry over is a variable that has to be accounted for in order to calculate cost. And since the amount of, we'll abbreviate this ASCO. Let's call it CO. Since the CO, not carryover is a variable has to be accounted for in order to calculate cost. And since the is CO is the dependent variable on the frequency of certain HP values on the board. CO cannot be calculated because the variable that depends cannot be calculated. Reasonable. So this is our first problem. Hello, Abhinav Ranjan. So you can't calculate that. Immediately, I'm at a roadblock. There's a TED Ed video that was a riddle that kind of dealt with this idea. We can have multiple currencies, right? Have a system with multiple currencies. We can say cost A is for CO, cost B is for HP damage. Maybe you don't have to calculate CO. So cost equals total damage output. And so that if plus one HP per attack. Therefore, cost equals HP times damage minus the I'm gonna rename this. I'll call it EX instead. Therefore, we can create a cost of this. So we don't know EX, right? And they're two different units. So how do you subtract? Well, at least we have an equation for figuring this out. Oh, you also have to account for card advantage lost. Uh, Cards are a different unit than damage. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. See, because if it was an additional cost, we could use a separate variable. Wait, isn't it an additional cost? No, because it's subtracting from the cost. So subtractive. Okay. This is bending my mind, chat. I feel like there just has to be a way I can quantify these. I can't. Logically, I can't quantify it. Subtractive. So what do I do then? If you divide a number by itself, you get 1. And then you can multiply it by any number to get that number, right? So I could just turn it into a multiplier, maybe? Instead of doing my, yeah. Okay, I'm live. Sure. Okay. Could say divided by. So that's just divided by HP times total damage, and then multiply by some variable you call actual damage dealt, and then you can't predict that. So So what do we do? See, because the thing about this is, hello, I'm trying to do math for a written equation to express card power in a game, but you can't do points times damage because of trample, so maybe. Maybe if I give them all trample. Okay, so I think I've come to a conclusion. Here's my conclusion, chat. All baseline cards will have trample. That means all damage carries over, and that gives me a reference point to compare power to. It's probably the simplest way I can quantify things. Because absence of trample itself is the anomaly. Even though it's a keyword that you have to apply to it, it's still a statistical deviation from the simplest answer. That makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm thinking very abstractly here. But I still haven't accounted for card advantage lost. But maybe I can just apply that too. It's another factor you have to account for. You have to account for having insufficient funds. Because in this context, since you have to account for card advantage lost, right? You have to account for card advantage lost, because if you don't, then it's better to have bigger cards in your hand than smaller cards, except really expensive cards. It's better to have mid-range hands. Because of card advantage lost, it's better to have mid-range power cards in hand rather than small power cards in hand, because you lose card advantage from it. But because of that, there's also the insufficient funds problem, where you have cards that are too expensive to play, and you can't go into debt. What if you could go into debt, though? But then you can just, like, trauma dump into one thing, and then you win. Like, that's not okay. You can't go into debt. No. So how do we solve the insufficient funds problem? Insufficient funds. What kind of cost do we apply insufficient funds as? Insufficient funds, how do we quantify it? What unit of measurement is it? It's a sort of makeup variable, as in the cost of the card itself impacts that. Because there's a lower bound. See, chat, because there's a lower bound. There's a lower bound to damage and health, but there's no upper bound. Insufficient funds is compensation. And you can't work back from the upper bound. You have to work from the lower bound. So you can't really invert it. So what does little old Cody do? Insufficient funds. Insufficient funds. How do we deal with that? Insufficient funds. Insufficient funds. This card advantage lost is just made up for, right? So maybe insufficient funds has to be made up for as well. You can't quantify it, can you? Maybe if can't really let them pay for a fraction of a creature. Because the main idea behind power balancing is that you're using what's up. Okay, let me look up what. All right, abductive reasoning is like Occam's razor. Deductive reasoning is narrowing it down. Inductive reasoning is like if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, feels like a duck, smells like a duck, tastes like a duck, then it's probably a duck. And then abductive reasoning is an inference. So I guess abductive reasoning is the simplest answer. but that's not what we're going for. We're going for inductive reasoning, I think. Right? Yeah, inductive reasoning, I think. So how do we account for insufficient funds? Okay. Insufficient insufficient funds. Losing my mind, chat. I don't know what's going on with me. It's a Boolean. Okay, it's a Boolean. True or false? Insufficient funds. See, because we have to account for the I think because insufficient funds is not negligible. Insufficient funds is as a factor is something you have to account for. You can't just say it's negligible. It has an effect. No, it does. So how do you deal with the insufficient funds problem? account for insufficient funds. So I got over the pitfall with chump blocking by adding a new mechanic called reverse trample. And then there's also normal trample. And as an ETB, you get to draw a card. I feel like there's so many compensations, though it's not going to be an effective baseline. Assumes what? Okay, insufficient funds. Can assume insufficient funds, but that's stupid. Or I guess assume no insufficient funds, but that's stupid. You can say yes, you can play it as a 1 HP something. Thanks, Zoom Scope Reader, for subscribing to my channel. I got a little notification. Hey, 263, let's go. Okay, so we're gonna Okay. Good point. Alright, chat. I think I'm gonna end the stream here. Wait, first I'm gonna show off what I did though. Um, so first I was trying to figure out if there's a way to mathematically calculate power value just off hit points damage. Turns out there's not because the variable of excess damage lost is dependent on the variable of the frequency of certain HP values on the board. Therefore, excess damage loss cannot be reasonably calculated. So, because it cannot be reasonably calculated, um, for baseline cards, I got rid of it by giving the cards trample and a new keyword called reverse trample, which basically means that cards that attack it get trample. So that way, that just sort of gets rid of that factor for baseline cards, but it also means that baseline cards are slightly more difficult to visualize in the mind because it's another factor you have to account for, but it's still mathematically balanced, and that's what matters. So then what I did is, after that, I had more factors to account for. So I had to account for the card advantage lost from playing the card, because it's better to have more powerful cards in your hand if you have low card advantage. Um, and then the insufficient funds factor, which basically is that some cards you just can't pay for because they're too expensive. So I accounted for that factor. Okay, so I accounted for the card advantage loss factor by having the card give you a card back when it enters the battlefield. Um, that way there's no card advantage lost. And then I also used a new keyword called shrink me, which basically says that if you can't pay for the card, you're allowed to play it, but for a custom attack and hit point value. Um, wait. So, okay, well, that's okay. So it does ignore the freedom of choice you get from getting to pick a custom HP and attack real number value from the shrink me keyword. Um, but that freedom of choice applies to all aspects of the game because the entirety of the game is context dependent. So So, okay, it ignores some things inevitably, but I think it falls within a reasonable range of balance. So, okay, I was trying to figure out if I could take HP and damage and put them into a single function for cost. Couldn't do that because of the excess damage factor. I also realized I had to account for the card advantage loss factor and the insufficient funds factor. Um, Excess damage lost is the idea that if you deal excess damage to a creature beyond its hit points, then that damage goes to waste. Um, I resolved that by using trample and reverse trample. Then the card advantage lost mechanic makes it so that um when I uh to account for card advantage lost was the idea that um there's bias when uh you lose card advantage from playing the card because that means that let's say you have one card left in hand, it's better to have a card that you can just barely pay for and has higher power than a card that you can easily pay for and has lower power. So I resolved that by having the ETB effect allow you to draw cards so you don't lose any card advantage. And because it pertains to cards, there's not really anything going wrong if you have zero cards in hand, because that's just kind of how it works, I guess. Because zero cards in hand is not pertaining to cards. Um, so it assumes you have at least one card in hand. There's two states, right? There's you have a card in your hand, you have at least one card in your hand. So that means that -1 goes to zero and then +1 goes to one. And if you have zero cards in hand, then you're not dealing with cards anymore in that matter. You just have an empty hand. Um, and then to deal with the insufficient funds factor, which is the idea that some cards you can't pay for because they're too expensive. I solved it by adding the shrink me keyword, which allows you to play the card for a custom HP and attack value, given that when you multiply those two new values together, the cost will be less than or equal to your current remaining funds, which means that you can pretty much play any card in your hand if you're playing all baseline cards. The idea of baseline cards is that the goal of the baseline card is to have the simplest comparison whose cost can be expressed as a function, then use inductive reasoning to determine card costs of cards whose complexities exceed baseline. Baseline cards are all mathematically near equal in power cost ratio. It is ideal to have as many variations in baseline cards as possible because that way approximate power values and costs of non-baseline cards can more easily be inductively determined by the human mind. Now that we have our baseline, we can impose cost values on our baseline cards and then compare baseline cards and their costs to non-baseline cards in order to inductively determine their approximate costs. So that's how I would do it. Yep. Yay! I'll make this little piece of text here. Make it like a dark red. Oh, whoops. Make a dark red text. I'll make this like a dark green. I'll underline these. But I can come up with power values for these now. So, for example, um, we can say so if cost equals HP times tac times U, where U is the multiplier for the currency. I'll make a table. Make it 5 by 5, 6 by 6. Say attack equals 1. Make sure not any weird tables up here. Good. Okay. Attack equals 1. Say attack equals 0. Attack equals 1. Attack equals 2. Let's move it along. Attack equals 3. Attack equals 4. Attack equals 5. HP equals 0. HP equals 1. HP equals 2. HP equals 3. HP equals 4. HP equals 5. And for attack equals 0. Wait. Oh no, I did this wrong. Okay, I might have done this wrong. I didn't account for meat shields, I don't think. Alright, because defensive trample, it's okay. Oh wait, no, hold on. What? Wait, if it approaches zero, then it's basically zero, right? Because you have an HP of 5 and an attack of like 0.0000001, right? Then uh, cost is negligible, and then you can just place as many damage soakers as you want. Oh no. Oh no. Oh. Oh no. Um. Oh wait, no, hold on. Then you can make a bunch of chump blockers. You can just make a whole bunch of chump blockers, right? And then, like, you can just empty chump blockers onto the board. Or not. You can empty a bunch of walls onto the board, and then have all those cards defend against all of your enemies' big creatures. Oh, but you don't have to defend against them. Okay. Trample, reverse trample, vigilance, and shrink me. Okay. Okay, so I just had to give him vigilance. Okay, so okay, I finally figured it out. Gauss formula, as in like a Gaussian Gauss. Several mathematical principles and methods. No, no sigma notation. Just a bunch of keywords. I just added a bunch of keywords and then multiply these values and it works. I guess it makes the game fair. Because if I don't put reverse trample, then the card has the advantage of jump blocking. And that makes the HP imbalanced. Alright, but yeah, I guess that's how my baseline cards are gonna work. A lot more keywords than I would have liked. Because now it's HP times attack, and then four different keywords to think about for players. But at least quantifies the cost. It at least makes a mathematically fair cost, ignoring a couple factors such as excess damage dealt to the palace and what happens if your deck is already empty. But other than that, mathematically fair within its own system, assuming all the cards are baseline, but mathematically fair, assuming those things. Yeah. So, for example, I made different cards. So for example, if you took the Unihorned Squibbler with an attack of 4 and an HP of 1, only costs $4 to play. If you play the Viper route, 4 attack, 3 HP, that's $12 to play. Wait a minute. But if you have 3 Unihorned Squibblers and 1 Viper route, and then one of the Unihorned Squibblers. But what if all 3 Unihorned Squibblers attack the Viper route? Then you get 3 damage that carries over. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, we have to put in multi-block too. if you have Viper Root, attack 3 Unicorn Squibblers, because they have the same power value. Viper Root deals 4 damage, so that's 1 to each Squibbler and 1 carries over. And Unicorn Squibbler deals 4, 8, 12 to Viper Root, and then the first one kills it, and then deals 1 carryover. And then the next 2 deal damage. That's not balanced. Okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm ending the stream. I'm ending the stream. This is stupid. I don't even know if there's a way to power balance this. Multi-block bullshit. I'm done. Um, yeah. Maybe I can solve this tomorrow. I don't know. I have to go to bed though. It's 11:15. So, good night, everyone. Uh, ending stream in 5, 4, 3, 2.